Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about episode 5 of the Interview with a Vampire TV show, and I am joined by Candace.
Hi.
I did it. I made it happen. I made an
Wonderful.
intro.
I'm so proud.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So, we are starting off this episode with Louis drinking off Rashid, and I was like, okay, I'm thrown off the trail. Maybe he's
Yeah.
not a vampire.
Yeah.
Maybe I just made that little tidbit up in my head.
Yeah. Same.
Mm-hmm.
I went, hold on a second. Wait a minute.
Yep. They really wanted to throw us off this red herring. They were like, oh, no, totally not who you think it could be.
Yeah. Now that it's episode 5, we're going to break your heart.
Mm-hmm.
We've got you now.
Yep.
So.
I was like, okay, never mind. Whatever. It's fine. So then Claudia, fully spiraling at this point, gets into her emo era and starts writing the final words of her victims, which is very, very good.
Yep. But she gets so sloppy, dude. She gets so sloppy. Like, and you know it's because she's heartbroken, right? She's distracted. Like, everybody, like every teen or 20-somethings girl, probably every person that gets their heart broken. I shouldn't even specify the gender of the person or how old they are, because everybody deals with things differently. But the classic trope of person gets their heart broken, freaks out, is exactly what you see from Claudia.
Yeah.
Just like miserable.
Claudia does not have access to hair dye and ice cream in this point in time. So
no, she does not.
She does the second best of murder.
Yes.
Those are your two options.
Bleeding people dry. I really like the attention to detail of her writing her victims' last words, because it gives you insight into her character being somebody who is more thoughtful, right? We know that she's more vampire than Louis is. He keeps a lot of his humanity. She's young enough to have humanity, but also young enough to not really need to keep it around the way that Louis kind of depends on his humanity. And obviously Lestat has kind of lost his over time. I like that, like, she writes the last words of all of her victims, because it doesn't really feel. So obviously we know some other things kind of come out in this scene. I'm not going to say anything, or in later on in this episode, but like it shows an appreciation for her victims, but also an entertainment as well. Like, some of the last words are funny, some of them are sad, some of them are, in French, some of them are in different languages, and she has to kind of guess what they're saying. Like, and I enjoy that she's kind of like, it's her own personal catalog of victims and everything, like her own gallery of victims, but it's also a way of preserving that person's memory as well. Something that, like, it kind of feels like that's why she keeps a diary, even though she's dead, right? Like, she's preserving her life and who she used to be, because that's something that she used to have, right? She used to write in her journal all the time before she was a vampire. So I did like that. That was a very nice touch, in my opinion.
Gives me very serial killer trophies vibes.
Well, I mean, that's not wrong.
Yeah.
She doesn't not do that. I like the scene where she, like, contemplates her virginity. That was something that I don't think I ever thought about. How, like, every time she has sex, is that going to break her hymen over and over and over and over again? Like, is it going to be painful and terrible like the first time every time because she died with her hymen intact? I don't think that's something that I've ever thought about with vampires. And when I thought about it, I was like, that's a big bummer. That's probably terrible. I'm so sorry for you.
Yeah.
That is a stress it didn't occur to me that you would have.
Like, I know. I kind of just love the way they're thinking about this.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, the detail they're putting into the show is lovely.
Agree.
And then we have Rashid saying to Daniel and being about Louis, saying, "You're chronicling a suicide," which I just thought was an interesting note, and I didn't think too much about it because we don't really have the context for it, you know?
Yeah, like, but it hits different when you finish the show. Maybe let's make a note to talk about that when we discuss the last episode, because I have thoughts that I need to get out.
We have a lot of notes for the last episode, to be honest. I hope we remember them all.
Yes, me too.
So then we get Louis, like, so he thinks that Claudia's not drinking blood at this point. Like, he's
Right.
convinced Claudia has locked herself in the room, isn't
Yep.
talking to anybody,
Yep. She's
being
miserable.
melodramatic.
She's
Yeah.
heartbroken, Lestat.
Yeah. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
she's starving. And so
Yep.
he, like, breaks birds' wings and leaves them in her room for her
And there's
to
just
be
like a
like,
ton of birds like littering this
yeah.
room around her coffin. And he's miserable. Please come out. Talk to me. Never once occurs to him to just
Mm-hmm.
open the shit.
No.
He's like, she needs her privacy. Lestat's like,
Mm-hmm.
what is wrong with you? You are being
Yeah.
played, my man. You are being
Mm-hmm.
played. Like, I also like how she kind of divulges like that she's old enough, like in through the journals, you find out she's old enough to remember what happened to her. That's different than Claudia
Mm-hmm.
in the book. Claudia in the book doesn't know anything else. But this Claudia is like, not only do I know that you did this to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Not only do I understand exactly who is responsible for this, right? Huge
Mm-hmm.
change from the book and the movie, but she's also old enough to realize that her life could have been fine and to know how old she could have been if she had been left alone and to
Yep.
miss what she never had, right? Like
Yep.
that's a whole other thing. Like I feel like it's worse to turn somebody under the age of like 13 into a vampire because you're not even close to womanhood, right? You know nothing about the world. But like at least if you're like 10 or 5 like she is in the book, like you can adjust. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like being 14 in that in between space where like you're kind of a woman but you're also kind of a girl, like how does it feel knowing, like I know that when I went through puberty there comes a time in your life where like you start looking different to men. Men
Mm-hmm.
stop looking at you like you're a little girl and they start looking at you like you're a woman. And it
Yeah.
usually happens way too early for the average girl when a man
Yep.
looks at her like she is a woman for the first time, and it's a horrifying experience. So
Mm-hmm.
what is it like to be a 14-year-old vampire who's actually a 40-year-old vampire or a 30-year-old
Mm-hmm.
vampire, however old she's in the scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like how must it feel for her to like know that older men are thinking about her in a creepy way, even though she's no longer a child, right? Like, what must it
Mm-hmm.
be like to walk around and see pedophiles everywhere, right? Like, I can't even imagine what that must be like. Like that must be fucking horrifying. Like,
The worst part too is that she can read their minds,
yeah,
so she knows.
yeah, yeah. I don't know how. I mean, if it were me, everybody would probably just be dead. So,
Yep.
nice job exercising a smidge of caution. And I
Yeah.
cannot lay on smidge more heavily. When I say smidge, I mean
Yep.
barely a smidge. Like
Barely. So then we get to the point where Lestat's like, you know what? We could just figure out where she is. And Louis like, do not do it. And Lestat decides to read her journal,
yep.
finds out that she is, thinking about having sex.
Mm-hmm.
And Lestat loses his mind
Yep.
because, he views Claudia as basically an object that he owns,
Yeah.
not really
Yeah.
as a growing woman. And
Yeah.
he loses it.
Well, I think that's because and that's one of the things that are interesting too about Louis being black and Claudia being black in this, right? And it's starting after slavery. Slavery is acknowledged, right? There's a conversation about it. We talk about, how the father, Louis's father was born on a plantation, right, to,
Mm-hmm.
into slavery. They talk about like different people kind of coming out of slavery, right? They talk about the free man and all that stuff. So it is something that's absolutely part of the palette of this show. But I
Mm-hmm.
think that like Lestat, even though Lestat is like slavery is bullshit, that's nonsense. You can't just own people, right? Like he's
Mm-hmm.
woke Lestat, but at the same time, like he neglects to see that he makes slaves of Louis and Claudia. And Louis
Yeah.
and Claudia are fully fleshed out, fledged people, right? They're not people who
Mm-hmm.
need him. They're not people who beg for his, his attention or whatever, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't really like Louis kind of fawns on Lestat, but for the most part, Claudia is like indifferent at best, right? So I think for him, like it's not even though he treats them as slaves. Like, yes, he treats them as objects, which is part of slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, he treats Claudia like she's a pawn, like
Mm-hmm.
she's bait, right? She's literally like he agrees to make Claudia because it's what Louis wants, and he thinks
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help keep Louis with him, right? It's the same thing as like how men will trap a woman or a woman will trap a man by like poking holes in the condom and oh now we have a child, we have a family, you can't
Mm-hmm.
leave, right? It's that same shit.
Yeah.
And it's so obvious. Like, it's just so obvious to everybody involved, except for Lestat. He's like, I'm doing everything by the book. And everyone's like, no,
Yeah.
you're horrible. Actually,
Lestat's
you're
like,
actually
baby
terrible.
trapping? Never heard of her. I don't know.
What is that? Who is that?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know this man. But like, clearly you do, sir. Claudia fucking is out, doing whatever she's doing, and there's like all this like love sickness and heart sickness, and Louis is worried, and Lestat's like, why are you worried about a fucking vampire? She is fine.
Yeah.
She is fine. Why are you worried about her? And Louis like, you don't worry? And Lestat's like, for what? Like, I could just make another one. It's not a big deal. Like,
yeah. Like,
he's so awful, but I love him anyway.
Lestat's like, she's a vampire. She'll just kill someone if she gets into danger. What's the problem?
We'll be fine. Yeah, like, work it out, bruh. And Louis like, this is a state of emergency. No.
Lestat's like, we don't have to worry until the sun comes up and she's not here. Then we should maybe worry, and then we'll figure it out the next night. But like, right now, she's fine.
Oh my god. Poor baby.
So then Lestat also finds out 1000% she has been drinking people's bodies. He sees that list of last words, and he's like, okay, she hasn't been bringing them home to the incinerator. So where
is she putting them?
Yeah.
And they get a hot tip, right? Like the governor or whoever that shithead is that they're always talking to, the guy that's like a fancy man. He's like, yeah, rash of killings. People coming up in the fucking... No? Okay.
Not in a 1 second they do, though.
Got it.
So basically, what happens is Claudia comes home and she's like, don't worry about it. I bury them. And Louis like, where? And
can't be
Claudia's
trusted.
like, in the middle of the swamp, obviously. Where else would I put them? And Louis like, you are not old enough to realize that swamp season, like rain season, means you better be burying them like 6 feet under. But if you're just like lightly burying them like a foot, they're coming up. And then what happens is a big storm comes through. That governor dude's like, yeah, we found 56 bodies and all of them were missing a tiny piece. How weird.
He's like, they've all got, I'm like, puncture wounds? He goes, missing parts. And I'm like, damn. She's a serial killer, y'all. She's taking trophies. She got little trinkets up in there. It's not just last words you're collecting. You're collecting thumbs and eyes and toes. That's nuts, girl. That's nuts.
Yep.
You're having a rough time. I think you need to get out more. And not in that way. Not in that way. Whoa.
So after all of that comes to fruition, cops show up. And Claudia's just like, yeah, come inside, officers. Like, no problem.
Totally out of her fucking mind. Like, they get home and there is an officer in their house talking about, I'm going to look through your shit. Like, hi, how are you? What's going on? Do you usually give your daughter alcohol? She's obviously drunk.
Yeah.
Because she fed off of somebody that was an alcoholic. Like,
and she's just inebriated, and Louis like looking at her and be like, go upstairs and hide your coffin right now, and then she's like la 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 la, and like trips up the stairs. Terrible. And like Lestat's sitting there, he's like, officers, how are you doing in our fine establishment? And like Claudia's just like hitting windows closed and like hiding all of her
perfume in the air.
Yep.
Because there's pieces of bodies in her room that probably stink to high heaven. Gross.
And then the cop comes into her room and she's like, I'm getting ready for bed. Like,
he's like, no, I don't want to see a naked child. Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. So funny. So funny.
Yeah.
And then after all of this, the cops leave. Oh, the cops are like, why do you have a weird incinerator over there? And they're like, oh,
we're rich. We sell stuff.
Yeah, what do they say? Like something like they're in the
we have a
like,
business.
wood fire business. Yeah. Something ridiculous.
It's and the demos. Cops are like,
yeah. Oh yeah, no, they say that they're in the incinerator business, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We supply them to places all over town. The police are like, all right.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they're like, you have one at home, why? And they're like, well, we like to just show them off, and
You know, we're making bank over here. Can't you tell? Everyone needs an incinerator, more than
yeah.
one in their home.
Mm-hmm. So he's like, we put our food scraps in there, it's better for the environment.
Big plumes of black smoke. That's what we need more of. Like, whoa.
They're like, we had a rat problem. I don't know. We just throw them in there.
And then they're like weird about it too. They like linger for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, there's been a lot of talk about your house. Like they say a bunch of like weird leading things that make Louis and Lestat go, okay, so we're not hiding it. Okay.
Got it. They're like, okay, so we're gonna have to move, aren't we?
Yep. Gonna have to go.
Yep. So Claudia, like after all this, they like bust in her room, and they're like, okay, what?
Mm-hmm.
What? And turns out Claudia has been trying to turn other boys into vampires and cannot make it happen.
Yep. I really like this as an alternative to the scenes in the book. So in the book, you've got the mother and daughter servants that get burnt in the incinerator, right? And then in the movie, you have that Creole lady that Claudia comes across that she puts in the bed, and she's like naked, hidden underneath all the dolls, right? So it's like they're keeping that same behavior that Claudia kind of intrinsically has in both pieces of media without having to kind of dig deep on the why of it, right? Like keep it the same, purpose, which I think is awesome. I like that there is kind of not a lull in the relation of the book and like the text to the screen adaptation, but like I don't know. It's like keeping respect for the original while giving something that's as an alternative that makes more sense considering the circumstances. Like it's just very well considered, which I like. A lot of adaptations either like we discussed in the last episode, a lot of adaptations either go too dead on, right, where it's exact, or they're trying to do something completely different but it doesn't relate to the changes they've made to the world. Right? Where like you're keeping things the same that shouldn't be kept the same, like what Kindred did. And I really like that they've taken the time to consider how she freaks out rather than trying to give you the exact same situation, even though this is an entirely new kid. Like she doesn't have a relationship with her mother. She would never be like, oh, I want a mom, right? Like this version of Claudia doesn't have that ache for a mother the way that the one in the book does. So they don't give that to you. And I love that. I also wonder how it's going to affect her death scene if / when it comes.
I know. I really like this change because like in the book it felt like she was trying to combine her mom and like herself and like a potential lover. So I really like that they're like, nope, cut and dry. She wants a partner.
Yes.
Which is fine. Like it does exactly what you needed to do. It tells you who she is, what her priorities are. Like I think it does everything it needs to do, which is all that I want.
Totally agree.
So then, basically after all this, Claudia's like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, she's like, she's pulling herself out of the spiral. She's like, I think I need something else to focus on. Like, I have a long life. If I can't have a husband, like, if I can't have a boyfriend, if I can't have a partner, I'm going to figure something else out with my time. And in that time, she's like, well, let's see what Uncle Les is up to. Let's see if he's, being a good husband father. So then she has this whole situation where she follows him and finds out he has a girlfriend, and then she goes, Daddy Louie, did you know perchance that Uncle Les is not being faithful to you?
Yep.
Just thought you would know. And Queen energy. I love this.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I'm telling truths tonight, bitches.
I love it because she needed something else to focus her energy on. And why not?
Especially because Louis was under the impression that shit ended forever ago with that bitch, right? Excuse my language, but I stand by it. Like, she's awful.
Well, he thought that was a one-night stand.
Right.
Found out that, like, okay, no,
they've been together.
Yeah. They've been seeing each other the whole time.
Yep. Yep. Affair this entire time. And like she's not ashamed of it either. Like she
Nope.
wasn't ashamed when Louis like talked to her the first time, and she is not ashamed now.
Yeah. So the dads start fighting.
Yep.
They're yelling at each other,
Yep.
screaming.
It's great.
And Claudia's like, I'm over it.
Yeah,
I'm done. So she is trying to find out about other vampires, and she leaves for 7 years. Yeah. She's like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to be an adult.
Yep.
Figure it out. And in this time, Louis and Lestat go full hermit.
Dude, they enter their hoarder era, like it's totally fine. Like that the fucking like House of Usher, right? Where there's just like moldering like cabinets and like drapes that are like covered in dust, and there's like newspapers stacked up really high, and there's probably they show like a little raccoon in the house, like the raccoon's like going through their stuff, right? Like, and Lestat is like, I fucking hate this so much. I honestly could die if I wasn't already dead. I fucking hate this. And Louis is like, oh, look at this Flaubert. Let's talk about Flaubert for a while. And Lestat's like, no. Do you want to go to the bed? And Louis is like, oh, you're right. It is time for bed. Full on pajamas with a cape, y'all. He's got pajamas bottoms, pajama top. He's got boxer shorts, right? Undershirt and a robe. And slippers, gets inside of his own coffin, fully dressed. And I was like, man, talk about a cold shoulder.
What is up with hoarders and keeping newspapers?
I don't know. I think it's because it helps them measure time. I don't know. Maybe I'm sure for most of them, because I hoarded newspapers for 5 seconds. Like I had a newspaper subscription because I just wanted to do all the crosswords. I would just like give the newspaper to somebody else and just keep the life section so I could fill out the crossword puzzle. So I think what it starts off as is like people are like, I'll read this eventually, and they like put it aside, and then like 5 years later, they're never going to read 5 years ago newspaper, but there it is sitting there in a pile of dust. So I think that's like how it starts, but like they let themselves go. Well, Louis lets himself go and Lestat doesn't say anything. That's really more what's happening.
Lestat's like, I'm going to throw this entire house away.
Yeah.
The second Louis turns his back.
Yep. She's going to set it on fire. Oops. Got to get a new house. My bad.
Yep. So then we see Claudia doing her own thing, and she finds this other vampire named Bruce.
Yeah. This scene was so interesting to me. So she experiences racism on campus, which I'm glad they don't shy away from, right? Like most institutions were not integrated at that time. And I know all about that because my family was very big. My dad's family is very big into education. They had light-skinned and biracial privilege because my grandmother and my grandfather were both, I believe, biracial, half black and half white. My grandmother was a very fair-skinned woman who kind of could pass. And my grandfather was lighter-skinned, but not as fair. So their whole family, like everybody in my grandmother's family, everybody in my grandfather's family went to college. And back then, I mean, even still now, if you ever hear the term HBCU, that's historically black college and university. So, like Morehouse, Spelman College, Texas A&M, right? There's a bunch of historically black universities all over the country. And plenty of people, went to these colleges and were educated there. But as colleges began to be integrated, that's kind of shifted over time. So at this point, like this random white guy walks up to her wearing this like Letterman jacket with the leather sleeves and everything. And he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And is immediately racist. And the excuse she makes is, oh, my mom works on campus. She's, a janitor. And that's why I get to go here because, she works for the university. But that's not enough. So when she meets Bruce, like this white guy is like being terrible to her. And he basically is like, why don't you fuck off? And like over his shoulder, because he's on the other side of the guy. And the guy like looks back at Claudia and she looks at Bruce. And that's when he like reveals his little fang. And like you can tell he's a vampire anyway, because he's got like red eyes and shit. Like it's pretty obvious. But this like idiot like white kid on campus is not paying attention to that. He just wants to bully this black girl. And that's like all he's thinking about.
Yeah.
My favorite part of all of this is like they flash to the next scene. And she's sitting like on a log, like in front of the campfire, getting to know this Bruce guy better, wearing the Letterman jacket. I was like, that's real queen shit. That's real queen shit. You like murdered this boy and took his clothes. And now you're like, ooh, chilly outside. Better put this Letterman jacket on. Like, just
love that.
Just beautiful. Just excellent.
And she also, I want to mention Bruce rolled up on a motorcycle.
Yes. Yes. And
So,
he's like flirting with her. Like it's obvious that he's interested. And she's
mhm,
excited because like this is someone she like obviously can fuck with. But
mhm.
like she lies and says she's 104. He asked her, like, how old are you? And she's like
Yeah.
104. Which I'm like, you mean 14 with a 0 in the middle? You're cute.
Yep.
Still a little girl. Still a
Mhm.
baby. Pulling that
Mhm.
shit.
Well, she's like 20 now.
Yeah. Right.
So,
She could easily just be like, "Oh, I'm 20. Oh, I'm
yeah.
25." Right? Like whatever.
Yep.
No. Does 14 with a 0 in the middle. Like
Mhm.
every fucking 14-year-old's like, "What should my fake ID say?" 21 years old. Exactly. Right?
It's
Like
like when I signed up for Facebook the first time. Well, when I originally signed up for Facebook and I just added 10 years to my age
uh-huh.
so I wouldn't forget.
See, it's easy. I'm not lying
Yeah.
exactly. She's
So
like 104. He goes, "Uh-huh, sure you are."
uh-huh. Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. So Bruce starts like lecturing Claudia on killing
Yep.
and hands her an etiquette book. And she's like,
Which is rude because it is an
yeah,
etiquette book on how to be a nice lady,
yeah.
how to
And
be like a better woman.
Claudia's like,
Stay in your lane.
thanks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like what the fuck? I don't need to know how to be a better woman. What are you trying to say?
Yeah. And then it flashes back to present day and there's 4 pages missing.
Yep.
And Daniel's like, Louis, why are these pages missing?
And he's like, "You
Where
know
are
why?
they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what happened. I don't have to tell you. You know exactly what happened."
Yeah.
Because he
Louis
gets
like, I know
violent.
what
Like
happened.
right before they
Yep.
flash back, like
Hmm.
Bruce like I think he hurts her leg, like he twists her ankle or like
Yeah.
fucks up her leg so she can't move.
Yeah. I think breaks her leg and throws her to the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like this scene happened at a
Hmm.
very strong reaction.
Hmm.
Note to the viewer, to the listener, when you watch this show, if you are watching
Hmm.
it back to back to back, something that I think AMC could do better is making sure that they have a longer content warning screen.
Yeah.
Because I looked away and didn't think they had a content warning screen and had to go back and check because I wrote down, why did they have a content warning? This is kind of intense.
Hmm.
Especially because there's more kind of this episode is a heavy one for violence. This is a
Hmm.
show that is very romantic about their
Hmm.
vampirism, right? It's very goth and lovely and languid and oh, these vampires, right? It's very fancy.
Yeah.
But like vampirism is inherently violent. Like you must almost kill or kill in order to get what you need, right? So being a
Hmm.
vampire is an inherently violent state to be in.
Hmm.
Um, and they do have a content warning in the beginning of this. Again, I do think it should have been longer. But I think that like there's 2 moments of violence. If you are someone who is squeamish or you have something that might trigger you with violence, be aware that
Hmm.
there is a trigger in the middle of the episode with this Claudia situation, and then there's
Hmm.
also one at the end, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I was very shocked, and I was like, okay, this isn't in the book, so that means that this is entirely an invention. When Game of Thrones
Hmm.
came out, and there's a lot of rape in Game of Thrones,
Hmm.
I was pretty turned off by it.
Hmm.
I think that rape as a mechanic for characters,
Hmm.
regardless of gender, but especially when they are woman or femme coded characters,
Yeah.
is lazy. I'm not a
Hmm.
huge fan of that at all. I don't like using it as a trope by which your character finds character
Yeah.
growth. And I was extremely wary. I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. Like it was a moment where I was like, I think they might have lost me as a viewer. Like
Hmm.
I don't love this. But you quickly realize that there's no discussion of what happened. They don't
Hmm.
say the word rape. They don't say the word assault, right?
Hmm.
Louis like, I'm not talking about that. I'm not going to go through and like make something of her pain, like make a
Hmm.
spectacle of her pain and what she
Hmm.
went through. I think you know why those pages are ripped out, especially
Yeah.
because they're not torn, they are cut,
Yeah.
right? They are excised from the book
Hmm.
almost surgically, right? It's a clean surgical cut in the book, like someone took an X-Acto blade to it, right? It was
Hmm.
very purposeful, and it's clear that Louis is not really concerned about keeping something from Daniel, even though that's how he acts. He's like, "What the fuck? Like you're keeping me secrets from me, right?"
Yeah.
It's not that. It's more he's protecting her
Hmm.
and keeping her memory clean. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because I'm sure that the way she wrote it too, like I am somebody who went through a domestic assault, and I wrote about it after. And in those moments, like, your page is your outcry witness, right? The pen in your hand is like the tool that you're using to catalog the pain that you felt and the experience that you had. And it's a very personal, very visceral, like, I do not read the entry that I wrote very often. I have it. It's in a place on the internet where I know that it exists, and I come back like every 4 or 5 years when I'm curious and I want a reminder of what I have survived and what I have been able to put behind me. But like, it's hard to read. It's very difficult to look back at something like that you write in distress, right, under duress, because it's sloppy, right? Your handwriting is scratchy and almost unintelligible. Like, there might be tears staining the page. Like, it's a very personal thing. So as personal as the story gets for Louis, as personal as it gets for even Daniel, right, that's something that's off limits. And I think that, like, it's beautiful that they kind of give this idea to you. I still don't think it needed to go there. I think it could have ended with her escaping and coming close to that and realizing, okay, that was fucked up. I could have been hurt, right? I could have been harmed, rather than they do insinuate that she was harmed and that's why the pages are gone. But I think that this was the best case scenario for them choosing to have this moment. Yeah. And considering how many femme people or women, right, depending on how you view yourself, how you choose to identify, like, experience rape in the college setting, I feel like it wasn't completely out of left field, right? It wasn't like, oh, it's your marriage bed and everything's fine, and then oops, rape, right? Which is kind of very much how it's used in Game of Thrones. This is already a bad situation. Let's make it worse, right?
Yeah.
But I still feel questionable feelings for them using it as a mechanic, but I also really like the way that they did it. I think that they were respectful and they were thoughtful about it, and that's something I appreciate very much.
Yeah, I like that they did not go into detail.
Yeah, they don't show it, they don't mention it. Like, it's that I felt was very good. And I also like that there's swift justice, because Daniel presses him and he gets heated. Like, he obviously is voracious. He wants more, right? It's clear that he wants more, and Louis slaps him down, basically verbally.
No, Daniel slaps Louis.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Louis slaps him verbally, because he does say something shitty at first. He's like, how would you like it? Like, he says, I can't remember exactly what Louis says, but there is swift justice. Like, he cuts him to the core. Like, he hurts him. And that's why he slaps. That's why Daniel stands up and slaps Louis, because like, he hurts him bad. Like, he cuts him to the quick. Yeah. And I also wrote a note about that. Daniel slaps him in the face. I don't know if did you write down what Louis says back to him? Like, how we get to the slap? Yeah, because I feel like I didn't keep the best notes in this scene, because it is very taut. Yeah. Like, there is some serious, like, the tension is thick with like 5 C's. It is intense. And Daniel stands up and slaps Louis, because I think Louis says something to him about his Parkinson's, or about not being a good father, or something that strikes a nerve. I think that's what it is. I think Louis like, I'm being a good dad, and like, you wouldn't know what that's like, or something like that. Like, he says something real nasty, and he slaps Louis in the face. Just as Rashid comes in and is like, oh, should I escort you from our home? Yeah. What the fuck? Right. And like, I've got to say, like, the fact that he as an older white man slaps Louis in front of like a man of color, in front of another man of color, right? There's 2 people of color in this room that arguably could end him. We don't know if Rashid's packing a fucking weapon, right? We don't know if he has Krav Maga or martial arts experience. Like, we don't know him. Right. He's in the he's floating through the background of these scenes. So we don't know what he's got packing. We don't know that, like, that Russian guy that's a snack isn't going to come in and pound his face into the ground. Right. And in that moment, Daniel doesn't care. It's obviously just a reaction. And I think that Louis lets it stand, because it's one turn deserves another. Right. Yeah. Claudia had a reaction. Louis had a reaction, which is why the pages are missing. And now Daniel has a reaction. And Louis tells, Rashid, hey, we're good. And Rashid's like, am I fucking dismissed? Then can I go? Because you don't need me for this, right? Can I leave? This is insulting, right? And Daniel doesn't apologize. Louis does not ask for one. Yeah. But like,
and they sit down.
Scene, yeah, they sit down and diffuse.
Anyways.
Yeah. But like, I will say, I very much had a visceral reaction to this white man slapping this black man in the face. I did not enjoy that at all. And I feel like it's kind of designed to make, this whole episode is designed to make you uncomfortable. This is the least comfortable episode of this entire series, hands down.
Yeah, they definitely were like, we're pushing the limits
Yes.
here. They're like,
Yes.
there's some things that you need to see, and we're just gonna lay them out on the table, and you can
Yep.
decide how you feel. And like, I know we keep comparing this to Kindred because of the fact that like that's the last thing we watched together, you know. But like for Kindred, the way they handled a possible rape scene is like they made some
Horrible.
sounds off the black screen, and you're like, okay,
Yep.
did it not?
Yep.
But like for this, we know what happened,
Yes.
and they are very specifically like, we're not going through that. We're not going to show you, you
Yep.
know, like Louis, like this didn't even happen to me. This is a very sensitive topic. Like
Yep.
that's my child. I'm not living through it again. I read it once. I know what happened. I know how she feels about it.
Yep.
We're not. This is her private journal. This is something she wanted to keep private. You're not looking at it.
Absolutely. And I think that like having that pause, right? That break
Mm-hmm.
also helps the viewer to readjust. Also helps the viewer to kind of like reroute and pivot and figure out like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, do I need a break? Do I need to get up? Do I need to wash my hands?
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to walk my dog? Do I need to read a book? Do I need to play a fun video game for a while, right? Because some people who are watching this are going to be triggered by that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though they go out of their way to not trigger you, they give you a content
Yeah.
warning, right? There's a lot that comes before. But once that has happened to you, once your body has been betrayed by someone else, it's very difficult to control your reactions to things that remind you of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's understandable. That's with any trauma. You know, my dad passed away when I was young. I have a very hard time watching movies and shows where a young person loses their parent, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
very difficult for me. So that's what I'm saying. Like little things like that trigger you, even though for someone else that might not be a big deal. For someone else who's gone through the same thing as you, it might not be a big deal, right? There's a huge spectrum that we're on when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to PTSD and giving ourselves grace and space to process those emotions. So I like what it has to say about all of those things. With Kindred, that's that honestly, I know that we're like comparing it a lot to Kindred and like, you know, you just acknowledge like it's kind of rough to do that. However, that's another movie. I mean, another
Yeah.
adaptation, right? Another
Mm-hmm.
film adaptation where you have a scene of rape that does not exist in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That scene in the very first episode where Dana, you know, is on the run to the other house.
Mm-hmm.
And that overseer or that guy that's like walking by catches her and tries to force himself on her and may or may not be successful. Again, they very much leave it open to interpretation, which like don't leave rape open to interpretation because all you're doing is encouraging me to think about it. And I'd really rather not fucking think about it. Like, don't
Mm-hmm.
make me spend time trying to parse out whether or not somebody was hurt. Like that sucks. Right. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to have to think about it any longer than this one scene. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But they kind of like feed into that and they invent this rape almost as a, we'll get used to it. This is where you are now kind of thing, right? In this circumstance, it is Claudia learning about the fears that other people have that are vampires, right?
Mm-hmm.
That she doesn't need to be afraid of, right? Which is the confrontation with the boy that's being racist toward her.
Yeah.
What happens when someone betrays your trust,
Mm-hmm.
right? So far, Lestat has been the only one who's betrayed Claudia's trust, and it wasn't in a way that really affected her. It was a way that affected someone she cared about, right? This is someone betraying your trust. She has inherent trust because she thinks vampires are going to be good. They've got to be better than Lestat, right? This is the first time she finds out, no. It's like humanity. You don't know who's nice and you don't know who's shitty until they show you, right?
Yeah.
All of these are important touchstones. I understand how we got here. In Kindred, I could not understand why suddenly there was a rape, right? Like it just seemed like a plot device. Whereas this seems like they're educating you about the character rather than developing her character through this moment, right? Even after this happens, for anyone who is curious and is like kind of on edge, like I know if I heard this, if I were a listener, I'd be like, yeah, but what next, right? We'll talk about episode 6 soon. But like, this is an important moment for Claudia, but it's not treated as plot development or character development. Like she is forever changed after this, or this continues to affect her in the future. This moment is brought up again eventually, and it is seen as the ugliness that it is. It's not a moment that's like, oh, here's a teaching moment, right? Like sometimes like in Kindred, they treat it like a teaching moment. Well, you know what almost happened to you out there, right? Like that kind of thing. Rather than this is something that happened to this character. It does not define them. It does not define who Claudia is, but it has educated her as to the dangers that are out there and has bolstered her understanding of her own freedom because nobody saved her, right? Nobody came to save her because she was alone. And you take with that the good and the bad, right? Every woman has to in this world, right? The good bad of walking down an alley by yourself, feeling strong because you're on your own for the first time, but also having to be aware that it could be dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's something that is uniquely for woman vampires for Claudia right now, right? Because like if that had been Lestat, that would have gone very differently.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like it's weird to say it is well done because it's
Yeah.
still gross, but
Mhm.
like it's the best possible way you could have done this
Mhm.
in this circumstance.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like it just kind of makes me trust AMC more, you know,
Agree.
for the way that they were able to handle this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I have more faith in their adaptations. Like if I
Same.
hear that they had an adaptation of a book I like coming out, I don't think they're gonna ruin it. You
Yeah.
know? Where
Yeah, you give it a
now
shot.
so like Hulu so ruined Kindred that I know they bought the rights to do A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I'm like, you're gonna
Yeah.
ruin it, aren't you?
So what I can say about that is Hulu didn't do Kindred, FX did Kindred.
Oh, you're right.
So Hulu owns FX. Like FX on
Mhm.
Kindred, I mean FX on Hulu is a partnership that they have so that FX
Okay.
can release all their stuff through Hulu. FX has actually had issues in the past, like DirecTV stopped carrying them for a while for whatever reason. I remember my mom was watching
Mhm.
American Horror Story and they were like, nope. So they have weird like licensing stuff.
Okay.
Um, so because I think Hulu is also partially owned by ABC because ABC owns Fox.
Mhm.
So I think that's kind of like the weird thing there. If FX is doing a Court of Thorns, then yes,
Yeah. It's
definitely
Hulu
worry.
specifically,
Yeah,
but
Hulu
like
specifically, it might be good. I can't
I
make
don't know.
guarantees,
Have you
but
read A Court of Thorns and Roses?
no.
I don't think you'd
Mm-mm.
love it, so don't read it. But like, it's
Okay.
one of my favorite books. It's like a little
Hmm.
guilty pleasure of mine,
Okay.
and I do not foresee them doing it well
Yeah.
because it's got like it's gonna need a lot of special effects because
Hmm.
it's Fae,
Okay.
and there's war and there's a lot of sex scenes, and
Hmm.
I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna chicken out. I don't know. I'm nervous. Like,
Well, see, if it's about sex scenes, then I would say I hope it's FX that takes the
yeah.
reins because FX does not give one F about holding back with sex scenes. I've seen some steaminess coming off of some
Hmm.
FX shows that I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know you were doing all that.
Yeah, I wish
So
HBO bought it, to be honest.
I feel that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Or Netflix. I feel like Netflix could have done well. I'm
I
just a
agree,
little
yeah,
nervous about Hulu. We'll see.
yeah, I feel
But
you. I'm excited to hear what you think.
yeah, I'll let you
Hmm.
know. I just
Awesome.
hope it's not going to be one of those where I'm going to like, just motherfucking ruined it. You know, like 'cause that's how it was with City of Bones when they
Yeah, I
bought that
didn't
out.
hear
They
good
put
things
it.
about that.
Oh, dude, they
Same thing
can.
with Shannara too, the Swords of Shannara.
Yeah, I never read it.
MTV bought that one, so
Yeah, I
that was
watched
always
it.
going to be bad, probably.
I watched it. I actually liked it, but like I
Yeah,
didn't read the
good.
books.
Me either.
So,
I
yeah.
think it's better when you haven't read the book sometimes. Like I'm very much a the book was better person. Like I
Mhm.
recognize that. I am very salty sometimes about adaptations and translations of things into different kinds of media.
Mhm.
Um but I will say that like sometimes not reading the books is just so much better. Like just such a
Yeah.
better idea. Um I think I would have hated Kindred even if I hadn't read the book, just
Yeah, for
because
sure.
there's just obviously wrong shit in there.
Mhm.
But like this show, for example, right? This is still a good show, even if you haven't read Interview with the Vampire.
Yeah. I think this one.
I feel like the reveal at the end might be a little different, will hit differently for you
Yeah.
if you don't have any investment in the core material, but it's
Mhm.
still a nice surprise, right? You still get like a ooh, okay,
Yeah.
cliffhanger, right? Like you can still get it even if you don't know the book.
I think this one, honestly, I would not. If you watched it and loved it, I wouldn't tell anyone to read the book. I don't think you would enjoy the book more. You know,
Agree. Agree. The
like
book won't help you.
no, I don't like. I think it's gonna turn too many people away because this one's like action, 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 whereas the
Hmm.
book's like, and then you know, this room with all the newspapers. The newspapers were like packed up so
Yeah.
high, and you're like, oh my god,
Let's
like,
go.
yeah,
Move it along.
yeah.
It doesn't
So,
matter how slick the cobblestones were if he doesn't fall on them. Just
mhm.
move it along.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be like, I know you like the TV show. What if you read it instead? Like,
And it was way more boring. What do you think?
yeah, Mm-mm.
Do you like really long descriptions of things?
Mm-hmm.
No? Oh.
How do you feel
Then
about
never mind.
Tolkien?
Oh my god.
Do you want to
Yeah,
hear about every
totally
blade of
agree.
grass, or is that
Every
not your
single one.
thing?
Every single one, especially the one that was slightly longer than the others.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So,
Ooh.
that really get you hard? Okay, then I think you would like.
This is what you need in your life.
Yep.
Yeah. Fucking no.
So then we get. I forgot to also mention that the woman that Lestat is cheating on Louis with, her name is Grace. Um,
Even though she has none.
Boom.
Mm.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So she's decided to move up north because she's getting old. Um, Wait. No. Nope. Incorrect. Grace is Louis' sister.
That's right.
Yeah.
Grace is Louis'
Whoops.
sister. What's the lady's name?
I
What's
don't
his
remember.
his side piece? Hold on. I'll
Yeah.
find out. You keep talking.
Whoopsies. We're talking a whole bunch of smack about Grace, and she just,
Yeah, no. Grace is moving up north because
Mhm.
she's getting old and her children
Yeah.
are like, let's go. And his mom has passed away
Yeah.
and she has no reason to be here anymore.
Yeah. Grace was
Mm-hmm.
like, listen, this area of town, I don't like the rules that are coming out. Like, we're gonna go up north, we're gonna have a better life. We're going somewhere
Mm-hmm.
else. And she's like, I'm telling you this because I love you. Uh, we've told the children you're dead and you are dead to us. Please never
Mm-hmm.
contact us again. I just wanted to let you know, you know.
Yep.
And Louis does not take this well.
At all.
No, he didn't even know his mom died. They're sitting at her grave and he's like, what? Like, why didn't you tell
Yeah.
me she died? And she's like, you have nothing to do with our lives anymore. My kids don't know you. Last they were so terrified of you, we had to tell them that you were dead so they could sleep at night.
Yep.
Brutal.
Super brutal. Very
Yeah.
hurtful.
Yep.
Not very nice at all.
Yeah. And so after his sister leaves, Louis fully like bawls his eyes out, crying, and Claudia is lurking in the background and sees all this happen,
Mm-hmm.
which is very cool. Um, and then after she lets Louis get a head start, and then after he's like, decompressing at home, she like walks in 5 minutes later. She goes, "So I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what's up, dads?" And Louis like, "My child is returned." Like, oh my god. And the staff's like, ew.
I mean, I guess I'm happy you're here or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess this is good, but also like, why?
Yeah. So then in her head, Claudia's like, listen, Louis, I'm going to Europe. I want you to come with me. I think we'd have a better life. We'd get away from Lestat. Like, he keeps cheating on you. We need a fresh start. And so, the dads start fighting again. And then Lestat goes and drinks Louis's blood.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what happens is that, he's like, listen, we're gonna go and do our own thing. She's gonna go to Europe, and Lestat's like, no, nothing's changing. We're gonna be a family unit.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they fight.
They're
Lestat.
like, oh, are we going to be a family unit while you're still doing Antoinette is her name?
Oh,
Of course it
Antoinette.
is.
Oh my
Of
god.
course it is.
Oh my god.
Much fancier. Much
Yep.
fancier for a fancy side piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they fight. The fight, I mean, I can't get enough of the fighting, really. What does that say about me as a person?
I know. But then he like drags Louis into the sky, drinking his blood.
Yeah, it gets really scary for a minute, y'all. It's definitely
Yeah.
domestic violence. It's bad.
Oh, it's real bad.
Yeah, it's really, really bad.
And then Lestat's like, say you don't love me, Louis, so I can finally move on. Just say you don't love me. And Louis like staring at him, doesn't say anything, and Lestat drops him back to the earth. Like,
Oh, he
they're
tells him to let him go. That's what he says.
oh
He's like, you have to let me go, like
yeah,
emotionally. And Lestat's like, cool.
yeah.
Petty ass. Petty ass just drops him,
Mm-hmm.
like, we'll let you go. I'm like, that's obviously not what he meant.
Yeah.
You're
And
being
like
ridiculous.
it ends with Louis just like on the ground.
Yep.
And
it's rough because, like, you know that, like, vampires have different rules for death, but this show has not given you any, like, guardrails. So you're like, I mean, I don't even know what's going to happen next. Like, you end on that. The 5th episode is just like, I don't know, start to finish. It's
wild.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
lot.
It is arguably too much.
Exactly. I was like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah. So I think my favorite thing about this, right, is like the detail. So like Claudia, when Claudia's watching Louis from the shadows and he's talking to his sister, she realizes finally, because like she's lurking them, right? Like she's totally trolling them all the time. She realizes that like she was meant to be a sister rather than a daughter. Like all this time she's had such resentment because she's like, oh, you guys think you're my fucking parents. You're not my fucking parents. Like, get out of here. But then she's like, oh, I'm here for him. Like, Lestat doesn't care about me. Like, he made me because Louis needed a sister because his sister has, like, refused him, right? And, like, that moment of humanity, like, I love it because it speaks to, like, the bond that they share, which I feel like in the book they kind of try to give you, like, a little bit of that, but it's not as, like, powerful as it is here, because it's kind of on her terms. And I feel like when like they start the fight, it's because like Claudia's like, you're not invited on our spring break tour of Europe.
Yeah.
You have to stay home. I love how like just the subtle detail, the costuming in this show is just next level. Like you're gonna, if you like costuming, like this is a good show for you. The foreshadowing, the scene where Claudia finally returns and they have this conversation and Louis is like, we're leaving, right? And they have this whole conversation that starts this huge epic battle. Lestat is wearing all black. And it is the first time that you will have seen Lestat in all black. Like, he's foppish, right? He loves wearing the best of everything. He's the only black that you ever see him wear at this point is like a suit jacket. Like, that's it. Like, you never see, and that's because he's going somewhere fancy. Like, you never see Lestat in all black. He is wearing all black like a fucking villain.
Yep.
And like you see how like quickly he turns on a dime on Louis. Like things are fine until they are absolutely not. And like to me, like I like that they show how he is an abuser. They don't just say that he's an abuser, right? He's not just rude or petulant. Like in the book, he comes across as more of a whiner, right?
Yeah.
He's like he's a pouty baby. And this Lestat is also a pouty baby, but they don't make him, they make him more serious.
Yeah.
And this scene shows him as like the threat that he truly is, right? Like they're under duress. It's not, oh, they can't leave because they're powerless to stop him. They can't leave because they're afraid.
Yeah.
Right? They're scared and they don't know to what ends should they be afraid. Especially, it's especially powerful in the face of Claudia having this moment with Bruce. Because she's already a little afraid of other vampires, and this kind of puts her back in her box in a big way. You know what I mean? Which is terrifying. Like, I think my heart kind of stopped for a little bit in this episode. Yeah. It is breathless. It is so scary. And I feel like it's the first time that like either of them are like shaken by this situation and are like, hold on a second. Like you realize that this is going to change everything for them moving forward, right? It's like this, it's very much a pivotal moment. Jeez.
Yeah, it was a lot. I don't even know. Like, shaken.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like when you got past all the violence, the in the sky scene, beautiful.
It was.
And then they were like, this is another thing Louis hid from, or Lestat hid from us because we didn't know vampires could fly.
Yep.
Outrageous.
And you're like, how many more secrets do you have?
Yep.
And how deep do they go?
Yep.
I don't know, man. Lots of spice here. Lots of spiciness going on. Gets intense. Big warning for you if you're gonna watch it. Like, it's awesome. You should absolutely watch it. It's really good. But also it's like
yeah. I know, I was very stressed out.
Yes.
But that is all we have for this episode. Where can the people of the internet find you and the things you're working on?
You can find me at that Candace Girl, Candace, over on Twitter, and at Candace Magnificent everywhere else, like Twitch, Instagram, and YouTube. I am going to try and do some ice cream reviews. I keep saying I'm going to do them, and I have a freezer full of ice cream. At this point, it is a serious problem. I have made a content calendar for my ice cream videos that I have not even filmed yet. So we're trying. We're doing our best, y'all. 2023 has been complicated. But you can find me in a variety of places doing a variety of things. I do variety streaming. I do YouTube stuff. I do TTRPGs if you're into improv and voice acting. So yeah, just look me up. You can find more of me there.
And if you haven't paid attention to the social yet, I do have another podcast that I'm doing with Nova now. It's Novel Nostalgic, Novel Nostalgia. So if you want to go and follow that on all the places you get your normal stuff, we are covering the first series of the Warrior Cats. So make sure to go check that out. And I will see you guys right here next week with more Interview with the Vampire. Bye.
Bye.